Today I'm going to show you how to modify existing textures procedurally. This means if you like a texture that you found online but it's not quite the right color, or you want a different roughness kind of setup or bump map or whatever, maybe you even want to combine two textures, I'm going to talk about how to do that procedurally. We'll start by showing you some websites you can download some free textures from. There's actually quite a few, so I'll just mention three, and then I'll show you how to set up those textures in Blender. And if you're already familiar with that part, you can probably skip over it to the next part I discuss. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I might go a bit fast over some of these examples just because I've done so many videos on proceduralism already. I tend to skip things that I think doesn't matter as much. Special thanks to my Gumroad and Patreon supporters. If you want to support me on Patreon, I've got a link to all my blend files from my tutorials and some extra blend files as well from projects that I've made. So let's start by grabbing a texture off a website. There's a lot of great websites to choose from. I'm just going to mention three of them. I'm going to mention textures.com, polygon.com, and Polyhaven, which used to be Texture Haven, HDRI Haven, and Model Haven, I guess, and it's all just combined into Polyhaven now. The first two websites, you need a free account, like for textures.com. They've got a credit system that gives you 15 free credits a day. And you can download, the lower resolution images from this website using those credits. There are a ton of images, though. Searching is really helpful on this website. Then for Polygon, once you set up a free account, let's go to textures. You can go to the free textures here, and they've actually got quite a lot. They've got 68 textures, really nice, high quality, and they've got some free models as well, and free HDRIs and brushes too. And then for Polyhaven, you actually don't need an account. You can just download directly right away. Downloading from all these websites is fairly similar, so let's just try grabbing a texture from Texture Haven or Polyhaven. And so there's going to be a lot of textures. It could be a little paralyzing to look through them. I'm just going to grab this marble here. And we can have an option of different resolutions. I wouldn't recommend going too high at first. 1 or 2K is going to be enough for most of your projects. And remember that these are going to use more resources and more storage space the higher resolution they are. So just 1K, I'm going to download. So if you find that file, this is what it looks like when you download from Polyhaven. And you can see it's zipped up. So I'm just going to extract it. Extract all to just where I've got this file here. So there we go. Now we've got our textures and a blend file. So if we open up textures, we've got these 4 different maps here: the diffuse, the displacement, the normal, and the roughness. Now inside Blender, I'm just going to change the whole middle area to the shader editor and to get rid of that shelf, and the top right to the 3D viewport. Just makes this a little larger. Zoom in and move your mouse up. You'll be in rendered mode. We just use this default cube. Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to change the cycles to, I'm just going to get a better result, I think, and GPU compute, and I can just leave it unsupported. That's fine. I'm going to grab this window that I've got these textures in, and I'm just going to drag them into Blender. There's the diffusion, the displacement, the normal, and the roughness. I don't think I'm really going to use this displacement at all, so I'll just move it over here for now, and I'll move the roughness up there. We're going to plug the diffuse into the color up here, the base color, and the roughness is going to go right into the roughness right here. And then the normal map, I'm just going to bring in a bump map and put that between the image texture and the normal right here. So plug it into height and then into normal, and then set this color space to non-color data. Then usually you want to turn this down a little bit. Generally it's a little strong a lot of times, so maybe 0.2 look a little nicer. There's actually a faster way of doing this as well. So I'm just going to delete all of this here, highlight the principled BSDF, and then if you hit Control-Shift-T, it will basically allow you to set up all these textures at once. So I'm going to grab all of these just by hitting A and go to Principled Texture Setup at the bottom there. And I'm going to get rid of this displacement. I don't really care to use that one. The normal map here is in place of the bump map that I chose to use, but it looks good with the way that it's set up here as a default. I wouldn't bother changing it unless you want to. And it also maps it out explicitly from the UV coordinates, which is what it was doing before, but it was just, not completely laid out for us. I'm going to add in an HDRI as well, because that's going to help this texture look a little bit more realistic here. The lighting is just going to be so much better. So I'm in World Properties. Next to the word color, there's this yellow circle. Just click that, go to Environment Texture, and it'll all look pink. Just means you have to add something in there. So go to Open, go to your HDRIs. I've got those free ones from HDRI Haven, which is now Polyhaven. And let's go something outdoors, maybe Cloud Layers 1K, and then I'm going to go down to ray visibility and unclick camera so that it still lights our scene, but is not in the background anymore. I'm going to get rid of this light as well. I don't really want it. Click back on my object there, and let's grab this base color texture right here and feed it into a color ramp, and let's see if we can isolate any part of this image. If we bring this up here and turn this down, we kind of get those cracks showing through there and the imperfections, whatever these are. Maybe I'll just set it on constant so I don't have to move both of them right next to each other. But something like this looks like it kind of isolates the cracks and those imperfections, so it also kind of isolates those tiles as well. So what we could do is we could use this as a mix factor to kind of change these colors a little bit. So if we put that into the factor, we put this into color 1, then color 2 we can set here, or if we want to do vice versa, we could do something like this. But I'm going to go like this here, and then we could change this to a different color of tile. Maybe green, or whatever, something that looks maybe a little bit better than blue. But this is just an example. I'm going to feed it into the base color there, and now we've got blue tiles with that same bump map and that same roughness map as the original image. You could also come to this color ramp and adjust the slider to get more of that original color showing through. This way it kind of looks like the blue is almost paint and it's being worn down there. And you can even take that one step further and maybe set this back to ease, just kind of have a map that's kind of in the middle here. And then if you think about it, we want raised parts in some spots and non-raised parts in other spots. So I'm just going to add in a a bump map. And so if we get it to kind of look like it's paint raised up, we can combine that with this bump map down here. So I'm going to change this actually to a bump map. I'm more used to using those. The normal maps are really similar, but I'm just going to put this here. So if I put this in here, it's going to be a little too strong. I'm going to turn that down to 0.2. And we can combine this bump map with this one just by feeding it into this normal right here. So then we can adjust this a little bit to get the desired effect. Yeah, now it looks like almost paint on top of that old chipped away area there. I'm going to turn this down to maybe something like 0.3. Maybe 0.5. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. We could also grab a color ramp and place it right here. And then on this color ramp, let's just set this color. I just hit E while my mouse was over top of that black color there. And I'm going to set that there. And then let's just do the same color actually. And I'll just make this one a little darker. And let's just see what that looks like if I plug it in here. So a little bit more color variation. And now, it's going to look a little bit better if you use a little bit more detail like that. Whether this is what you want to do or not, it's up to you. But that does look kind of cool. It looks shiny, like paint there. I could even bring this slider down a little bit and just make it look like maybe the paint's just wearing off on this one side here. And a couple other spots as well. Let's take a look at this roughness here. This is another thing that we could modify. You can see that this image is pretty close to, light gray or even white in a lot of areas. So that's going to translate to a rougher image. So if we wanted something smoother, we could do that with a color ramp or something else that does a similar thing, but color ramp will work pretty well here. You can take that image, and let's take a look at what we're adjusting. You take that image and move this slider up here, and we'll get much more smooth, almost wet-looking tiles in some areas here. Yeah, you can see the reflection right there. Much smoother. If we turn this down, it's almost, you don't really get any reflection at all. You can even make it rougher too, but, it's just going to make it all kind of the same texture anyways, which will probably be, not that exciting. We could also use a noise or something similar to create a different, roughness or normal map pattern as well. So let's try something like that here. I'm going to bring in a noise texture and just plug it from the object output of the texture coordinate. And let's see what we're working with here. I'm going to feed this into a color ramp just so I can change the values quickly and on a pretty intuitive level. And let's change the scale to 1 and the detail to 4 and maybe bump the roughness up to 0.7 or something like that. It's really up to you how you want to do that. And let's say we want to modify this bump map. Here's what it looks like right now. We want to use this pattern right here to modify it a little bit. So I'm going to bring in another bump map, and let's actually bring these ones down so that they're all kind of next to each other. A little easier to see what's going on. There we go. And so this bump map here, if we look at this, I guess I am looking at that. Okay. Oh, it's because it's not into the right thing. So yeah, it should just be into the height there. And let's go ahead, maybe put that up to 6 detail. I don't know. It's totally up to you. And I'm going to bring the roughness down, actually, maybe to 0.4. Yeah, that looks cool. And it looks different from the existing bump map, too. So we'll be able to see it a little bit better. And let's plug this into the normal right here. And we can now see this new bump maps. It doesn't look great. It's really just for example purposes. We could also bring in another noise texture and kind of mask it out a little bit too. So let's grab this here, go 0.5, bring in another color ramp, and these are going to go a little closer together. I'll go 2 for the detail. We really don't need detail here. And I'm just going to change the scale a little bit, maybe to, well, let's leave the scale as it is, but I'll go to 40 so we get a different iteration with this W value. And then we can use this to mask out a part of this texture right here, just by going like this. And now, basically, it's going to show that texture only in some spots there. So, basically, this texture here, it's only going to show where the black parts are. So, in fact, I'm going to back it off a little bit. Something like this. And now it's much more apparent. This is the texture before the color ramp, masking some of it out. This is it after. And then this is the bump. So you can see it's only in certain spots. And if we wanted it in more spots, we could drag this up or the bottom flank there just to change that gradient. So there it is down there. And let's see what that looks like on our final texture. You see these, just bigger divots out there. If we wanted maybe more detail, we could do that too. Maybe 0.4. Let's try making this into displacement, actually. That might look a little bit better. And I'm going to hide that cube for a second because it's a little trickier to use displacement on a cube. Kind of the faces do some weird things if they're not set up properly. So I'm going to hit Shift-A and bring in a plane. And let's put that same material that was on our cube onto our plane. We've got it so far. And I'm going to run this into a displacement instead of into this normal right here. So let's get rid of this for now, but I'll leave it there so we can get it back if we want. And I'm going to run it into the height on this displacement. And let's feed that into the displacement right here. And then let's add a subdivision surface modifier. We'll leave it on simple. We'll just turn it up to 6. And last thing as well, we have to go to the material properties, scroll down. Oh, it is set on displacement. No, wait, that's not the right thing. Oh yeah, okay, so this is always a little confusing. So under settings, under displacement, bump only should be set on displacement only or displacement and bump. So let's go displacement only, and now we can see our actual mesh is displaced using this noise texture that we set up back here. So I'm going to decrease the areas that it's displacing there, and let's decrease the strength as well, just by going to the scale, maybe 0.2, a little bit more reasonable. Maybe go 6 with here. We could change the scale if we wanted. Make smaller divots there. And we could use this map too to maybe adjust the roughness. Maybe just bring in a math node. And I'm just doing this quickly, not even really thinking about it. So let's see what we're actually doing. So we're adding this to this here. So that means those areas are going to be smoother. Maybe not what we want. So we might want to change that up, make them rougher. That would be, it'd make a bit more sense. In fact, let's just do that. Invert. And now everything is black, so it's not going to add anything there except for these spots where the displacement is. So it's going to add a little bit of roughness, but the roughness is already pretty high. So if we wanted, we could turn this up here. And then it actually makes a bit more of a difference. Again, it's just kind of personal preference. And maybe we want to just go back to a 1 for the scale there. Turn that roughness back down. Something like this too might look a little bit better with the experimental feature set and adaptive subdivision. I'm going to get rid of everything here. Just start from scratch again. Bring these back to the principal BSDF. I'll just plug it into color, into roughness, and this is going to go into a bump map, which I'll set to 0.2 for the strength. And I'll just plug this into height and plug this into normal. And there we go. It's back to our original image texture. All right, I'll grab a texture off polygon here. Why don't we go with one of these ground textures? I've always found these kind of cool. So ground forest, and I'm going to go to 1K again. I'm not going to worry about that. I have 0 credits, but you don't need any credits to download these free ones, so I can just download it and, find that file. Again, it's zipped, so don't forget to extract all and just put it where this file is anyways, and you'll have all these images here. If I look at this folder, it's got a lot more files. It's got AO, which is ambient occlusion. It's got 2 bump maps, one that's 16-bit, one that's not. Same with the displacement there. This flat that I don't really even know what that is. It's got glossy, reflection, and preview, normal. So I'm not going to use all of those. I'm going to use the color. I'm also going to use the normal map, and we'll use the glossiness, which is the same as the roughness, but we may need to translate it a little bit. If we want it to be, actually this looks fine, so, or no, that's going to need to be inverted rather. So if we look at this here, it's going to look a bit better going into the roughness. Let's try that out. So roughness, this is going to go into base color, and this is going to go into the normal map with a bump map in the middle. We'll plug that into height and probably put this to 0.2. Why don't we do that preemptively? And let's look at this here. Yeah, you can see when you really zoom in, the 1K is not going to look that impressive. So if this is a close-up, maybe go a little bit above and beyond what I've done here. But I'm just going to go for this as demonstration purposes there. And I've got my texture coordinate and mapping nodes here. I did that just by highlighting this and hitting Control-T. That brings them up automatically out of the UV. The reason I put this invert here as well, let's take a look at that. If we just plug this into roughness, we can see it looks very wet. And the reason is because we have a lot of dark areas here from this roughness map. And I just knew that it wouldn't look right. You can see that these leaves here are whiter. That's probably just, something that they want to be a little bit shinier, a little bit smoother. So you can see in this texture here. Also make sure to set the color space for the normal map to non-color data. So now that I've got both of these principal BSDFs set up with these textures, I can actually mix these together by holding down Control-Shift and clicking and dragging from one of these to the other. Now I've got a mix shader where if I bring it to 1, it's the ground texture. And if I bring it to 0, it's the tile texture. So I'm going to make a reroute here by holding down Shift and right-clicking and dragging through here. And I'm just going to bring this up here just so I can kind of work with it a bit better. And just keep in mind that you want to feed something into that factor that's going to be some data that tells you which texture is going to go where. I'm going to bring in a separate XYZ, and let's actually bring in another texture coordinate node, and I'm going to hit Alt-P to remove it from that frame, and let's go to Object here. So if we're looking at this right here, Y is green, X is red. So why don't we do something on the Y axis here so we can look at that right here. And I'll bring in a color ramp just to make this really simple. And we can move this back and forth. I'm going to put this in the middle. We'll put it at 0.5 and make sure this is set to white. And I'm going to have one set as black. And right before here, I'm just going to bring in a map range node to make it so that we can kind of extend the range to -1 there. So now we've got black, black, white. And if we wanted, we could bring these in a little bit, just like this. In fact, why don't we do that? We'll go 0.3, and this is going to be 0.7. And maybe we'll just extend these out here. I'm not, trying to do it exact. It's just to kind of create a simple division right here. So we can then plug this into the factor right here. We've got different textures depending on where we've got this set up here. What we could also do is use this to raise areas up. So this is kind of the opposite that I want. Let's switch these, and now we kind of have a path in the middle of this dirt. So I'm going to make it so that these are at 0.15 and this is at 0.85. And I'll just bring these kind of close right here. So we have a slight gradient. And now I'm going to use this as a displacement. So if we feed that into the height, we can plug that into the displacement right here. And then let's turn this down to something like 0.1, 0.03. Yeah, something like that. Now we've got kind of a dirt path and, not a dirt path, but just dirt and then a tile path. We could also add some bumpiness maybe just to the ground there. So I'm going to bring in a noise texture. There we go. And let's just put that from object into there. Let's see what the size looks like. It's probably fine. So just put it there. And basically I want it to not appear wherever the path is. So I'm just going to take this texture and invert it. So we have black, right there. So basically it's going to add 0 where all the black stuff is, and where all the white stuff is, it's going to add that noise there. So I'll put this into here, and I'll just reset it to black, and then we'll put this right here, and move this over a bit. We'll just add this to the displacement. So I'll put that here, and run that in here. And now let's look at this. Let's try turning this frequency up a little bit, maybe to 10. And we can also, I'll just duplicate this math node, change it to multiply. And then we have a controller. So like if we wanted to set that to a higher level, we could set it to like 5 or something like that. So now it's just displacing this part here. Maybe set it to 2 or something. The thing is now it's kind of a little higher than this ridge, so we could do a 2 on there as well. And if we wanted that gradient to be sharper as well, we could just, tighten these up. Let's also add some divots into this tile path. So I'll just use this here as a mask, and I'm going to duplicate this noise texture with this color ramp with Control-Shift-D, so we get that guy. And this time I'm going to have it mostly be white with some dark spots like this here. And I'll just turn up the frequency a little bit to 10, and just to the detail at 2. Maybe turn the roughness up to 0.7 or something like that. Get a bit more. You tend to get more like less clumps, I guess. So anyways, we'll do something similar here. We'll bring in a mix, and that mask right here is going to go to the factor. So let's take a look. We only want the pattern to be here. In fact, I didn't really need to use this invert now that I think about it. I just needed to plug it into the different socket, but it just helped to think about, what it's going to look like. Try it out, and if it doesn't work, just try the other thing. Just keep trying stuff so it works, or everything breaks. That's my method. So anyways, we've got these divots here, and that is what I want it to look like. So let's just try adding it. Let's see what happens. No harm in trying it out. So I'll just bring in an add node here, and I'll put it right here before that multiply, or pardon me, after that multiply, and just plug it in there. Let's see what's happening. Yeah, there we go. We got those divots a little strong. So let's put this multiply here and set it to something like 0.2. Yeah, there we go. Extra displacement map now. If we wanted something kind of unique, we could change this to a larger number and then turn this up to 2 again or something like that. And then we'll have some larger holes, although it doesn't really look like anything's being affected just yet. I mean, it would really just be that one area. Let's see. It doesn't really seem to be affecting anything. Well, whatever. Just change it around until you're happy with it. There we go. That seems to be working now. Let's turn that back down to 0.2. And you could even use this as some kind of roughness map if you wanted as well. You know, maybe take it from here and add it to the part of this principled BSDF that's controlling the tile setup right here. That's how I would do it. I think this looks pretty good, but the gradient is kind of bugging me. So I'm going to actually swap this out here and just create a second gradient for that separation, which I'm going to tighten up. So basically just bring that all the way, pretty much all the way to the left. So this is at 0.155 and the other one's at 0.15. This one's at 0.85, so I'll go like 0.845, something like that. Looks much better. So that's it for today. I just want to discuss a few ideas with you guys about changing some existing textures, and hopefully it was helpful for you. If you have any other ideas of things you might want to do or things you have questions about, please let me know in the comments. I'll see what I can do to respond to them. And, I like talking about this stuff, obviously. So anyways, thanks for watching.